In today's episode, I saved this mint but broken Fiat Cento Sporting from the scrap heap. That's right. Just what I needed in my life was another thing to do, but I couldn't resist. This car is far too nice for it to go anywhere near a scrapyard. And if I'm honest with you, there is a little bit of a plan involved with this one because, as you probably would have seen from the intro, I've bought it cheap. It's broken. I'll explain why it's broken in a minute, although I've got a bit of a weird update of that one. So I'm going to fix it, sell it. Definitely not going to keep it. I'm not going to keep it. Keep saying that. I'm not keeping this one. There's no need for me to keep it. I don't need another car. And if I make the profit on it, which I'm hoping that I will, then that money then can go into the other car. As you heard in my last video, the Lemon needs plenty of updates, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So I'm going to save this little peach, and then hopefully do everyone a favour. Never say Cento on the road. Money in Ben's pocket. And I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to give you the real quick, brief rundown about how I found out about this and what's actually wrong with it. And then we're going to dive straight in, knock this bad boy out the park. It's not till you realise actually how small my garage is. Everyone says my garage looks big in the videos, but I mean, that's a Cento, that's a quad bike, and then a bucket seat, and then I've got no more room. But really quickly, 40,000 miles, multiple injection Cento. It's the really late one with the micro ECU, which I know is a bit less popular when it comes to like buying these if you want to engine swap them and stuff. But that's not what this one is for. Interior looks like no one's ever sat in it. It is mint. Bodywork is fantastic. It's got bird poo and like moss growing on it at the moment, but I'll figure that out. Rust wise, it is peachy. There's none inside the boot. This one on inside the actual arch itself has had one tiny little patch, which I'll wire brush and retreat again anyway, just to make sure that one's all right. And the other side is starting to get a little bit scabby, but again, that one does not need welding. So I'm going to wire brush that, treat it, underseal it, done. Other than that, the exhaust is toast. I think it's got more paste holding it together than it has exhaust. But otherwise, four new tyres. The brakes all look good. I can't find another single fault with it. But why was it so cheap, Ben? Because the owner said that the ECU was toast. And fixing ECUs on these isn't necessarily that easy because you need to buy a decoded virgin ECU, or you need to get a whole barrels of keys and ECU and stuff off another one. And I just thought for the money, it was worth a punt. I thought if it goes all terribly wrong, I'll just throw an engine in it with carbs or something just for a laugh. But on that, I've got an update. You joined me from the mint interior of this Cento, where I'm going to tell you what happened. So I took the word for it. This was going to be the ECU problem. And I was chatting to my friends about it, and they said, have you actually tried it? And I was like, no, I haven't. I haven't tried it at all. So I stole the battery off the Lemon, poor car. I fitted it to this car. I turned the key. I expected nothing to happen. It spluttered. So I turned it again, and it started. It ran like a pig. It's either missing or its fueling smelled terrible. And that confused me, because if the ECU is dead, then I wouldn't expect it to do that. So I noticed there was a code on the actual dash. So I thought, well, these have got OBD2, unlike the old Centos, and Cinquecento, sorry. So I put my little diagnostic tool on it, plugged it in, ran the diagnostic, not expecting it to be able to do anything if the ECU was toast, because if it's busted, it's not going to give me error messages. Comes up, coolant temperature sensor broken. And it needs a coolant temperature sensor to work out fueling when it's cold, I think. I don't think it uses it for the rest of the time. It might do, but either way, that could potentially explain why it was running like a pig, because it can't work out what to do with the fueling. Who knows? It may be they've already gone down this route. It may be that I replaced that part, which does look old, so it doesn't look like anyone's replaced it and tried this already. I may replace it. It may still say there's a fault. It may still run terribly. It may be the ECU is toast. But up till now, it's looking pretty good. I mean, that's a £14 part. It's arrived already. I ordered it. I haven't ordered anything else because I want to make sure that works first. But I've got to do some jobs to get it off. So I need to drain the coolant. It's two 13mm bolts, 12mm bolts, and a pipe. That's it. Then I'm going to bolt it back up, put the coolant back in it, start it up, and see how it does. If that fixes it, then this would be the easiest project alive. I'll order an exhaust, stick it for an MOT, buff the heck out of it, stick it up for sale. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. I'm going to go drain the coolant first. Let's do that. That's easy. Actually, before I go, look at this. This is what I'm talking about. It is literally, even with the bad lighting, it is just so clean. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to hoover the engine bay. Weird comment, I know, but there are so many leaves and just spider webs and all sorts where it's been sat. I'm going to do that first. That'll be nicer. Dead easy to drain the coolant. Easiest way you'll ever do it is just jack the car up a little bit, put a bowl underneath, take the bottom hose off the radiator. If it's never come off before, it might have the original Fiat like pinch clip type ones, or a Jubilee clip like it is on this one. Drain it out. If it's fresh and clear like my one looks, it actually looks pretty good, then you can reuse it. Now that is the only thing that makes me think they might have attempted something like this before, because that coolant looks relatively new. It was really super low when I did it, but either that or this has got really good service history. But either way, still not entirely sure, but let's rule it out anyway. Okay, the coolant wasn't as new as I thought it was. It's like a weird sort of orange. I don't know if they've mixed it. I don't think it's rust, because I've seen rusty coolant and it's not that. But that does make me feel a little bit better that maybe they haven't tried this already. I don't know. But either way, it's all drained out. Now, you can't see it very well because of the lighting, but that's the connector for the coolant temp sensor there. It is just down in this corner there. You can just about see it. There's a bolt here, there's a bolt below it, and there's a pipe coming out of it. And it is, if I just grab the real bit, yeah, something like that. So it bolts on like this. That's with the connector on. Now you can see on these ones though, it's actually a built-in sensor. You can't take just the sensor out. You buy it as a complete unit, which is kind of weird. Don't really know why they've done that. Potentially because it's a plastic piece. They don't want you threading it and stuff. But anyway, it comes with its own little O-ring seal. So we'll pop that on and see what happens. I hope this is going to be as easy a job as it should be. This is a perfect situation actually to say why these are so useful. I haven't had one my entire life. I always use a manual method of doing it, but in tight spots like this, when actually you'd end up being like this for about 5 minutes, whack that in there, zip it off. So I've undone it by using the old normal socket, and then I'm just going to whip it off of these now, but thankfully they actually came undone pretty easy. And I won't lie, that was actually a little bit more troublesome than I thought it was going to be, because you see this weird little clip thing here that actually pushes in, and this little clip like catches onto something. It did not want to come off. Now, I'm not going to lie, it was probably worse to get it in than it was to take it out. I would love to give you some sort of top tip how to make that easy. It wasn't. I used a long screwdriver to get it out. Just put it on the top and just hit it, so it sort of pushed the part down to unclip it, but it still didn't really want to come out. Just a lot of wiggling and sort of leveraging it with a screwdriver till it come off. Same as going back in. You've got to kind of line it up. You'll see what I mean if you ever come to do this. You have to kind of line up the little slot. And again, there's a lot of sort of levering it with a screwdriver and wiggling until it got into place. Just kind of working out from that. It is not easy, but it's perfectly doable. I mean, that really was a sucky job, but it took me 15 minutes all in, I would say. So I'm going to bolt this up, grab my tea, drink that, stare at it for a second so I can feel like I've accomplished something before I realise it hasn't fixed the problem. Because sometimes, you know, feel good about it for a sec before you get that cold, hard slap of reality that it didn't work. Yeah. I have filled it with water because rule number one, if you ever do anything that involves coolant and pipes and all kinds of things, is put water in it first. So then if it starts leaking out terribly, then it's just water on the floor, or at least a little bit of coolant in it. And also then if it all works out okay, cool, drain it back out again, you flush the system, everyone's a winner. So I've not put loads of coolant back in it yet, because it's just a false economy otherwise. But if this works and this runs perfectly, I'll pull that hose off and I'll put some proper coolant in it. Now, I'm not going to lie, I am a little concerned this hasn't worked, and I'm also not going to say that I wouldn't be disappointed if it hasn't. But I'm going to put the key on. I don't remember if the engine management light is supposed to go off when the ignition's on. I can't remember. Let's try it. Nope, still sounds like crap. I will see if that's the same engine code. I will need to clear that actually. I think the ignition coil packs are gone as well. Yeah, I ain't got time to look at it now. I'll be back another time. Okay, so I've put the episode up for the mini quad and I'm back out here working on the car again. I completely forget where I got to, as I usually do, but I've got some news. You see in me here, I've got a box with ECU testing on it, which would lead you to believe that I've sent my ECU away. They've looked at it, they fixed it, and I got it back. Part of that's true. I did send it. I rang them before I sent it off to give them all the part numbers and stuff. They said, yeah, sure thing. Ping it on over to us. Great service. Send it off. Got a call a day later saying, can't do it. We haven't got the ECU software we need for it, which is a little bit surprising because I would have expected him to check that when I actually rang them up. But, you know, mistakes happen. So they sent it back to me for free. So I didn't pay any money at all, sent the ECU off, nothing. So now either I get a recommendation for a different ECU company and I send it off to them, or I bite the bullet. I'm going to speak to my mate Claudio in Italy. He's found a couple of companies that do decoded ECUs. So they basically remove the immobilizer code. And the first time you start the car up, it takes the code off your key, in theory, and it sends that new code to the ECU, and that's the new immobilizer code then. That's how it's supposed to work. It's about 120 euros, plus some postage, and almost certainly some customs charges, I imagine. So yeah, so I'm gonna have to do that. But in the meantime, now I know that one way or another I've got to buy an ECU. Before I didn't want to buy one, do any more stuff to the car, until I knew the ECU had been sent away and they told me that was the problem. Obviously I don't know that now. I can't get it fixed, potentially. So because I have to buy an ECU anyway, I may as well fix all the other things. And as I might have said before, the previous owner said that the garage that was looking into this before we actually sold it to me said that it looks like the cooling fan had shorted out, that had sent power back to the ECU and it had killed it. That makes sense because these don't have a rad fan switch. It's all controlled by the ECU. So if it fired a load of power back down the wire, it probably burned something out. So I've got the bumper mostly off. It's a little bit of a pain on any of these, really. It's just an annoying job. Arch liners out, the whole shebang. I'm going to take that off, drain the water out of it, because again, I only put water back in it because I knew this could happen. Take the radiator off, take the fan off. I've got a spare uprated one. I'm not uprating it for any reason other than it's free because I've already got it. I'll sort the wiring on it, just change the wire connector over, make sure the wire doesn't look dodgy running around through it, chuck it all back on there, and then at least it's all ready then for when I get the new ECU. I'm still not going to do some of these other little problems. So obviously it's got a leaking gasket and it needs a new exhaust, because that is absolutely not needed as far as testing if the engine works. Then if the ECU comes and it works, boom, we'll carry it on. So yeah, just stick around for a minute while I do this. It's not particularly interesting or exciting for me or you, actually. So I'm going to knock that out. Get that ready, and then I'll tell you the plan for what ECU I actually ended up going for. I'll wait till Claudio comes back to me. So I changed my mind. I just feel like I'm asking for trouble on what is a really nice car that I don't want to take the bumper off if I don't have to. So rather than risk snapping off the 2 torque screws this side and the 2 the other side, I think I can get away with it. I've took the arch liner off. I can see the fan and everything really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack the car up, put it onto the ramps, get a good bit of clearance from the floor. And then there's only really 2 bolts that hold the radiator in on the top bracket. Drain it all off, pull the hoses out, drop it out through the bottom instead. I just think it's less things to go wrong. If you can avoid taking body panels and stuff off, it's just best to. It's always hard to line them up. It never quite looks right, I think, personally, unless you do it often. And I just think it's going to limit my chance of having like a busted looking front bumper when it's actually a perfectly mint car. So I'm going to do that instead. So yeah, do all the stuff. And there you go, one potentially knackered Cento fan. Now these are actually quite expensive for what it is, really. It's only a plastic bracket and a fan. Just for a little top tip, one, you don't need to take this one off because obviously it's got the Fiat original connector on there, which is a little bit of a pain to get off anyway. But obviously if it's got a Jubilee clip, cool, undo it. Otherwise just pull it down through. It pokes through this little hole just up here. So I pulled it down, that's just going to stay on there. Just makes it a bit easier to route it back up in a minute. And likewise, this bottom one's really easy to get to from underneath the car, but with the bumper on, this top one's a nightmare. So obviously it's sort of under here by the heat shield and everything, so it's a right pain. So all I did was undid the horn and just move it over a little bit. You don't have to undo it completely, it's just to give you a little bit of extra room. And then I took the hose off the thermostat under there instead, which is why it's there. It just makes it easier. I think someone's done it before because there's a Jubilee clip on this one. And that's it. So what I'll do is I'll chuck the new one on. This radiator looks decent. No reason to believe it's damaged. I've put it on this so it doesn't smash up all the fins. We'll put the new fan on. I'll quickly show you it. Everything back up in reverse. And so I'll stop waffling on for a minute, grab my tea and crack on. There you go, simple as that. Now you might be looking at this thinking, wow Ben, that fan is tiny. Now it isn't actually as small as it looks compared to the original. It's probably only about, I don't know, 10 mils smaller all the way around the outside, but this pulls considerably more air. It is louder. That's why they tend to put the quieter ones on these cars, so you can't really hear it. But this, you can feel this considerably far away when you turn it on. And obviously the original one only cools one half of the radiator as well. These are ideal if you've got something with pushing a bit more power, or you use it really hard like for track days and stuff, because you can fit 2 of them and it'll cool it down lovely. I have one on a manual switch and one that runs normally, so I've got no problems with this one actually going to cool everything down. So all I need to do now is to put these connectors on the other end of this, the bullet connectors, throw it all back on. It should be a lot easier because there's obviously a lot less stuff that's in the way. I think I mentioned before I wasn't going to fix anything else on this car until the ECU problem was resolved. I've kind of gone back on that a little bit, but I'll touch on that in a second. ECU wise, I've actually managed to sort it out. So I've been speaking to my good man Claudio, who lives in Italy, and he has managed to find me a company that sells decoded ECUs. I've been assured by the company in Italian, so I've had to have a bit of translating that it has been decoded. There's no mobilizer code on it at all. They send comprehensive instructions, which I have translated via Google Translate, which tells me how to code it in. A few little kind of offs and ons and revs to certain mounts and leave it off for 20 seconds, all that kind of stuff. So fingers crossed, that is all I need. Now, as soon as that turns up for the pricely sum of £123, once I did the conversion, but obviously now we're not part of the EU, thank you very much. There's loads of custom forms, and I'm going to end up having to pay handling fees and VAT and customs and all kinds of jazz. So we'll worry about that when it gets here. But in the meantime, I have been cracking on because I was getting a bit angsty about having all this stuff sat around waiting to do. So let's quickly do a whistle-stop tour of stuff Ben's fixed. The radiator's back on, the uprated fan's back on there, it's got coolant in. I will need to bleed the system on that at some point, but that is done. I've also took this bracket off and painted it because it looked disgusting. I cleaned up a few other little bits and bobs while I was in here. Oh yeah, on my way into the car, fixed it. I'm doing myself an injustice here, I actually did do another job. So the back right hand corner has had a very small patch on the inside arch. Really nice job actually, so there's nothing for me to do there, but the actual inside the boot is peachy. And the other side, again, miraculous for a Cento. It was absolutely fine. Some of the underseal was flaking off and there was some surface rust on that inner arch, so I got a wire brush on a drill, wire brushed the heck out of it to get it all back. Still looking good. Did some rust encapsulator. I've actually got a really nice can of it there. Sprayed that primer onto it as well. That kills all the rust off. So I had a couple of coats of that, and I used some high quality stone underchip as well. Undercoat, stone chip, whatever you want to call it. I actually used some decent stuff because let's face it, no one likes seeing a car plastered with that greasy, horrible stuff that everyone uses when they're trying to bodge over something. So I've got some of this bad boy on there. So yeah, so that's all done. There is literally no other rust or anything for me to sort out underneath the car. It is tidy as anything. And just because I have to wait for the ECU to turn up doesn't mean you have to. So you can come back in the next episode when the parts have arrived from Italy. We'll chuck them on the car, and if it fixes the problem, we'll go and fix everything else, put this bad boy up for sale, and see if we can't make a little bit of money for some stuff that's a little bit more interesting. Yeah. So I'll see you next time.